Welcome back to Creating Cooperative Kids. I'm your host, Bill Corbett. Indian speaker and philosophical writer J. Krishnamurti said there is no end to education. It is not that you read a book, pass an examination, and finish with education. The whole of life, from the moment you are born to the moment you die, is a process of learning. The same can be said about parenting. We don't learn once and then know everything. It requires an ongoing learning to better understand our children and how to raise them effectively. My next guest says that discipline should not be about punishment or teaching our children that we are the boss, as our parents taught us. Instead, we should be helping our child learn far more effective lessons that will strengthen our relationship with her and to help her grow strong from the inside out. Dr. Susan Markel is a board-certified pediatrician and a graduate of the Tufts University School of Medicine in Boston. She's the author of the book, What Your Pediatrician Doesn't Know Can Hurt Your Child, a more natural approach to parenting. Now, I've asked Dr. Markel to come on today's show to help us understand more about the chapter in her book titled, Treat Me Like I'm Someone You Love. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill.
I love this chapter because this reminds me of the whole aspect that I think most parents want, and that's to treat their children with unconditional love. I think that's what life is about, treating those we love with unconditional love. That means no matter what you've done, we still love you the same. We should not be withholding love. And the unfortunate thing is we've been trained, and this, first of all, this is not to slam our parents. Our parents did the best they could with what they had. So let me get that up front.
I agree.
And the important thing is that I think our parents tried to do that. But what they ended up doing was, if we weren't behaving the way they wanted us to, they withheld their love from us. So I love what you wrote about in this chapter, and what inspired you to write this chapter?
Well, there actually is a story. I didn't know that you were going to ask me about this, but there is a little bit of a story that goes with it, and that is me being a pediatrician. I was in the exam room one day. There was a 4-year-old child, and I was talking to the mother. And as you can imagine, an examining room in a doctor's office is not very interesting to a 4-year-old. There was basically nothing to do. I did have a drawer that had some rings in it, and the children could pick out some rings and play with a little bit of jewelry and take something. So at one point, the mother stopped talking to me, and she saw that the child had his hand in the garbage can. And she started yelling at this child, "What are you doing? Stop what you're doing. Why are you doing that? Get your hand out of there." And the child very quietly and sheepishly looked at the mother and said, "I dropped my ring." And I felt so bad for this poor little child that he was not intentionally being bad. And this brought home to me that children rarely have the intention of being bad or to upset their parents, but the parents interpret childhood behavior as, he's doing this to get me, he's out to make me mad, when really the children, they don't even have the concept of trying to make their parents upset. They're just learning and exploring.
They are. In fact, it reminded me, I was standing in line in a general store in a little community, and there's a mom and with a little, must have been like a 4-year-old with her, and she had an 11-year-old. And the 11-year-old's, Mom, why are we going to do this? And why can't I go over here? And why can't Cindy come over? And so the mother is trying to concentrate on her transaction. Meanwhile, the 4-year-old is grabbing the shiniest packages on the candy shelf, right? And then every once in a while, she'll argue with her 11-year-old and reach out and snap the 4-year-old's hand, said, "Stop it, put that down, leave it alone." Exactly. So I leaned over to her and I said, "You know why I think he's doing? He's grabbing the candy with the shiniest packages. Do you have keys or something you can give him?" And she looked at me like, "Who are you to say that to me?" But then she went in her purse and pulled out her keys and handed them to him. And he just stood there and played with the keys. So, and I think oftentimes parents just have this, this chatter going on in their heads that keep them from seeing children as children. And it the kids' noise kind of adds to their chaos. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I always say that children come into this world innocent. They come into this world ready to learn, love, and play. And so many times parents unknowingly act in ways to quash their children's natural ability to enjoy the world and to learn and to discover.
And that's why I think parents are more successful when they learn to redirect their child, not chastise them, not punish them, but just redirect them. once parents get a better understanding of what's going on with their kids, with the wiring, like you said, they arrive in this world. They just want to like play and discover. They're little explorers. They also want to like know where do I fit in? Where's my place in this family? I want to be like you. How come I can't do that? You know. So one of the things that you said is we should teach children how to listen. What about that?
It's very difficult for parents to teach children how to listen because we never learned how to listen from our parents. There's an intergenerational cycle of not knowing how to listen. And most of the time, parents are very distracted. And they listen to the words, but they're not listening to the meaning. And children are very aware of adult communication. And when they know that they're not being listened to effectively or empathetically, then they themselves tune out and lose interest. So we have this cycle of lack of listening. The parents are not listening and the children are not listening. And then sometimes it just gets to the point that the parents get very frustrated by it and somebody explodes somewhere along the line.
And as I always tell parents is, you know, when we talk too much and we think we're communicating to the child, but they're not getting it, and they stop listening to us, and it becomes like parent deafness. So the parent talks, but the child's not really getting it.
Right. One time I was doing some parent coaching where I actually went into the house because the mother called me up and she said, my child doesn't listen, I don't know what to do, I'm just so upset, I'm so frustrated, he never listens. And so I went to the house and it was just like watching a video of how not to parent. And at one point she said to him, if you don't stop that, I'm going to count to 10 and you better stop. And she just kept counting to 10, but she didn't do anything when she got to 10. And so there was no consistency there. There was no following through. The other thing that she did is when he finished dinner, actually stayed with them through lunch or dinner, he took his milk into the family room and he was playing and he brought the milk into the family room and he had it on the floor. And she was yelling, I told you not to bring the milk in here. Why you bring the milk? You know it's going to spill. Stop bringing the milk. And she was just yelling into the air. And I just got up and I got down on the floor with the child and I just got literally on his level, the 4-year-old, and I looked at him and I said to him, your mommy doesn't want you to bring the milk in here because she's afraid that it's going to spill. So can you bring the milk into the kitchen? And quiet as can be, he got up and he brought the milk into the kitchen because I got down on his level and he could listen to me and I could listen to him, and this is something that the mother just wasn't doing. She wasn't listening, she was just yelling, and he wasn't listening, and on and on.
But what you suggest is so important, getting down to the child's eye level and communicating. The other thing is speaking softly. What experts have discovered is that when a child is screaming and yelling, if you go to the child and you talk really quiet, they actually stop the screaming because they really want to hear what you have to say. And so it's all about being, again, treat me as if you love me. And unfortunately, children get the brunt of all the stuff because we have to, you know, speaking on parents' behalf, they are so overworked today. Today is so stressful. They're somehow supposed to figure out how to work more for less money and do more. Their employers are putting pressure on them, but yet children don't care about that. They're still children, and it takes time and patience.
Right. At any given time, there are so many more compelling things for parents to think about than their children, but they have to set those things aside. They feel like, I'm too upset, I'm too disappointed, I'm too anxious. The parents are just so overwhelmed. But when it comes to their children, they have to put those things aside and pay attention to their children.
And unfortunately, some parents save parenting for the last few minutes of each day. It's not. Parenting is ongoing. From the moment you walk into the door, from the moment you pick the child up from preschool, that's when parenting begins. But unfortunately, we get dinner in the way and guests and work issues and things like that. Real quickly, we only got a minute left, but discipline. Discipline, what's your... Parents need to understand what discipline is.
Well, the word discipline comes from the Latin word discipulus, which means learner. So the child is the learner and the mother or the father is the teacher. And so discipline has nothing to do with punishment. It just has to do with teaching children the correct ways to behave in any situation so that when you're not there with the child can still behave in the proper way to live in society.
Yeah, and I tell parents, you're the teacher, really. Parents, how you respond and act around the child is like the #1 rule, and I think we forget that as parents, we're on stage, and your kids are watching you, and so if you're yelling all the time, that's what they're learning to do. If you're mean to the other parent, they're going to learn to do the same thing. So we are a model for children, and so we really need to, you know, calm down, take a step back and realize really how important our role as a parent. Thank you so much for coming out. I hope that parents get a lot of information and just breathe deeply and relax, right?
Thank you, Bill.
If you're dealing with the same behavior challenges with your child over and over and over, it may be a sign that what you're doing isn't working. Taking a more humble approach and allowing yourself to be more open to learning other parenting skills will give you more options for handling your children. But what about the unique characteristics of your child? We often hear the claim from some parents who say, I need more information because my child is different. That's when temperaments and other factors come into play. My next guest is considered an expert on the highly sensitive child. We're going to continue our learning on the complexities of our children right after this break, so don't go away. We'll be right back.